All right. Good afternoon, folks from around the globe. I know the world is watching at this moment. It is January 28th. We are here for a special meeting of Board of Police Commission budget. First, I'd like to announce that we are on Mi'kma'ki, the unceded and ancestral land of the Mi'kmaq people. And I'd like to call this meeting to order. And really quickly, just to do some camera checks, I'll just go by the order here. Commissioner Beals, who sent his regrets today. Commissioner Blackburn.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Hopefully you can hear me okay and see me okay. Having some technical difficulties, but I think we're working through it.
Commissioner Gordon.
Good day, Mr. Chair. I am here and ready to go.
I don't know what that noise was. Maybe we can figure out. Was it Natalie? Just unmute yourself really quickly.
Is it me?
No, it wasn't you. Okay.
Okay.
Because it happened earlier. We'll figure it out. Commissioner Kent.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm present and accounted for. Thank you, and looking forward to a good meeting.
Great. Commissioner Thomas.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'm here, ready to go.
All right, and Commissioner McDougall.
Here I am, ready to go too.
Yeah, I'm not sure where great. Thank you. I'm not sure where the sound is coming. It seems like when folks unmute themselves, it happens for a second, then it goes away. So we'll see if it persists as the meeting goes. Move to approval of the order of business, approval of additions and deletions. Anything quick?
There have been no additions to the agenda submitted to us.
All right, and members, any changes? Not seeing any. Call for a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chair.
You, Commissioner Borden, seconded by Commissioner Blackburn.
Thank you.
All those in favor, or I guess call for the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? Hearing none. All right. Moving on to call for declaration of conflict of interest. Seeing none. All right, we're on to reports / discussion. So starting with 4.1, point 1, Royal Canadian Mounted Police financial reporting. And I believe we have Chief Superintendent Gray and Inspector Pepper who are going to present things. Oh, am I on the wrong one? Oh, no. We have on the agenda 4.1.1, our CMP first.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. So, and welcome to your first chaired meeting, Commissioner Smith.
Thank you.
So I'll get right into it. First and foremost, recognizing that the RCMP budget and presentations tends to be very complex in articulating same. And so prior to giving my presentation today, I'll let everybody know that on February 16th, we have a planned presentation for councillors or commissioners that would be interested in participating in not just the budget presentation. It's not about the budget, it's more just about the PPSA, the RCMP, and our role in HRM and the province. So invitation will be going out for those interested, and there'll be a fulsome description and articulation about our budget process to hopefully help both our commissioners but also our councillors with understanding how we're paid for. So I'll just jump into it. So we are obviously RCMP and HRM were provided under the PPSA, that's the Provincial Police Services Agreement with the province of Nova Scotia, and that's with entered into with Public Safety Canada. The province retains a 70%, 30% cost share agreement with Public Safety Canada, and this includes Halifax Regional Municipality, as you know, which and that's despite the HRM's population, they still get to participate in the 70-30 split as opposed to the 90-10 split. And public safety absorbs the remaining 30%. So currently in our fiscal year, we account for $27.8 million of the overall HRM budget. And how that $27.8 million comes to effect is we have 184 positions, sworn members and a civilian member, and we take our formula, which comes out to each of those, 70% of that is 151,923. But what we have is that's an all-encompassing number. So that $151,000 includes a number of different pieces. It's not just wage and pay. So my discretionary funding, or pardon me, control over that is $3.6 million, which is overtime, fuel, equipment, phones, travel, repairs, clothing and kit, those types of things, as well as rentals. So in this, our total Halifax District budget also includes the Integrated Criminal Investigation Division, so we can provide an overall picture of our expenditures. They're based on the end of year budget data maintained here in our Management Administrative Services office. And as I said before, the past several years has been fairly consistent at $3.6 million. Previously stated in some of our presentations regarding COVID, I spoke about a leave restriction that we had, which definitely cut back on our overtime monies. So that's you'll see that there's a very large a very large difference in regards to what was budgeted for and what we had paid for. And of course, travel related to training expenses have also been greatly reduced because of COVID-19. We don't receive our budget letter from the province until after April 2021. Therefore, from a forecasting perspective, we don't have exact figures at this time. However, I don't anticipate a large change in regards to our budget ask. So if you look at the chart, we have our total overtime budget is significantly lower than what we had budgeted for. O&M budget, so as I said before, that's discretionary funding. That includes everything that I'm responsible for. We are pretty much in line with what we anticipated. And then of course, we're about $1 million shy of what we forecasted for in our total district budget. However, we have some IT and other housing pressures that we are anticipating previous to the end of the fiscal, which will bring us up to where we have forecasted for. However, again, those aren't solidified yet. Pending any questions, that's my submission.
Thank you, Chief. I will open the floor for some questions, starting with Commissioner Gordon.
No questions or comments from me at this time. That's fairly straightforward, and thanks, Janice, for putting that together.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Thomas?
Well, thanks for the presentation, Janice, but I have no questions at all right now. Thank you.
Commissioner McDougall?
Thank you for the presentation. I'm looking forward to February 16th. It's always good to learn more. And thank you. I have no questions right now.
All right, Commissioner Kent?
Thank you. I'm looking forward to the opportunity to get a little deeper into the whole thing as well, and hear what the other councillors have for questions and such. This is great, and yeah, I'll just leave it at that. No need to. I think it's pretty concise. Thank you very much, Janice.
Thank you, and Commissioner Blackburn?
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Janice. I appreciate the complexities of this process, but no questions at this time. Just thank you.
Great, thank you. Really quickly, just for my understanding, when I look at the, well, maybe others as well, but when I look at the table that has the numbers, the breakdowns, the first overtime total overtime, and then there's the total overtime expenditures. And to year to date for the first overtime budget, it's about 200 and some over the budgeted number. So is what happened for you to get to that point?
Are you referring to the 2019-2020 budget?
2019-2020, and then the year-to-date 2020-2021, $2,195,000.
Oh, no, that's just that was just what we budgeted for. So,
okay, so
we've only spent 1.2 year to date.
Okay, right. So all right, so this is why I needed clarification. So I was reading it wrong. All right, I thought so, because it was different than what you were saying, and that's why I was confused for a sec. So that's great. Thank you. This is why I don't do budgets. All right. So if there's no further questions on that, I will. Do we need a motion on this item? I don't believe so. But do we need a motion on this? Clerk?
No, there's no motion required for this.
Okay, great. So moving on to 4.1.2, Halifax Regional Police proposed 21-22 budget. We have Chief and Greg Horton, who should be Chief Casella and Greg Horton, who are scheduled to present, and I believe you both are here.
We are, and good afternoon, everyone, and through you, Chair, to the board. We are here to follow up on our presentation from December 14th. There are some changes and a couple alterations, so I'm going to turn it over to Craig Horton to take you through the slide presentation, and then I'll come in at the end to do a bit of follow-up.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Craig Horton. I'm the financial coordinator for Halifax Regional Police. Can I get the presentation ready there? Perfect. Okay, so jumping right in, as you know, we on December 14th presented the first draft of the, it was a 4-year plan for the operating, really focusing in on just the next year, obviously, for approval for 2021-22. So just a couple of key points we wanted to point out first. The proposed 21-22 net operating budget will increase by about 2.3 million from year to year, so from the current fiscal year to next year, but that's not including any requests to include funds for service enhancements. So any of the service enhancements we've identified in section C on in the later slides here, they would represent an ask to increase the overall operating budget by regional council by that amount. Next bullet, they proposed 2021-22. Oh, can we go? Thank you. Given the second bullet there, if the service enhancements are included, that increase year from year would go up to 2.63 million. And finally, we just wanted to point out that the proposed net budget for 2021-22, even though it is higher than last year's budget, it's actually still 1.19 million lower than the proposed budget that was approved back in January of 2020 for the current fiscal year. So this would be the budget that was approved before COVID took place and we had to do a full recast. Next slide, please. So it's the proposed service enhancements that are in section C on the later slides here. They represent 332,000, so a $332,000 increase would have to be made to the budget for the identified service enhancements. And finally, we just wanted to mention that the proposed budget is consistent with the target net operating budget figure identified by HRM's Finance and Asset Management Business Unit for Halifax Regional Police without taking into consideration the service enhancements that we will review here later. Next slide, please. And finally, we're still dealing, with the COVID-19 pandemic. So the proposed net operating budget continues to factor in significant reductions in areas such as overtime, court time, equipment training, travel, extra duty, service fee revenue, etc. And the plan is that these reductions we will look to be restoring them over a 2-year period beginning in 22-23 fiscal year, which are factored in the budget figures identified in the below slides. So next slide, please. Okay, so this is very similar, identical to the presentation on the 14th, and I'm going to point out the adjustments that were made. You can see the previous, and I'm just going to focus on 2021-22. So the first column of the 4 there. The current fiscal year budget is 86,275,100. Everything identified in the next following sections would result in a forecasted net budget requirement to operate of 88,912,000 for an increase of 2.6 or 2,636,900. That's the 2.6 I identified earlier. That's including the service enhancements of 332,000. That is currently not in line or consistent with the target that HRM Finance and Asset Management provided. When we look in Section A, the estimated budget pressures, for compensation, it's 2,064,400. A portion of that is regular contractual increases for HRPA step increases and SUPE 13 annual increases, non-union adjustments, ISAs, those type of things. That is 465,700. And the remainder is a decrease in the credit for attrition or turnover, vacancy management of about 1.6 million. And that you may recall in the current budget that we're in for this fiscal year due to COVID, we did increase that significantly with the intention to keep positions vacant throughout the year. Putting this money, reducing this credit will allow us to continue to fill those positions heading into next fiscal year. We're looking at about a 2.5% increase for overtime as well as court time. We do that annually because as the compensation increases, the rates increase for the Halifax Regional Police Association, we also have to factor that it has an impact on overtime and court time. So that would be 60,000 and 27,300 for next year. That's based on the reduced budgets for both of those sections, overtime and court time. The next A4, biological casework analysis agreement. This is the DNA testing that we send away for results to the federal government. Just a slight increase there, 5,300 estimated, represents a 1.5% increase of the existing budget. And we also have A5, which is an increase for facility lease and operating costs. This is mainly our integrated criminal investigation division building, and that contract has significantly a larger increase every second year. So that's why you see 34,009 for 2021-22, and then a small increase in 22-23, and then a larger one in 23-24. Next, so that the total for estimated budget pressures was 2,191,900. Moving on to Section B, these are all COVID-related factors. You can see for the most part, all the reductions that we made in the current fiscal year won't come back until a portion will come back in 2022-23, and the remainder in 23-24. So it's about a 50% of each. So 50% of the reduction we made this year will come back in 22-23. The other half will come back in the following 23-24. That's what we're proposing. The first one there, B1, Commissioners, Nova Scotia. We reduced that budget for COVID significantly, and due to what we've been experiencing over the past 8 to 10 months, Operationally, we feel we need to increase that to bring some of those individuals back. And so that's $365,000. If I can go to the next slide, slide 7, please. The remainder of the COVID-related factors that you see there are ones that we have to make further adjustments this year or into 2021-22 because of what we're experiencing in the current fiscal year. So, we've seen an increase in the need for personal protective equipment of $80,000 for next year. We did do a reduction in soft fee revenue for the current fiscal year, but we're experiencing a greater reduction. So we're adjusting that budget by another $20,000 for 2021-22 with the expectation we'll bring it back up the following 2 years, $50,000 one year and $50,000 the next, for a total of $100,000. Our extra duty program has taken a bit of there's not as many jobs happening during COVID, so we have extra duty revenue from external companies that hire officers for different things like escorting a large piece of equipment to the city or whatnot. And then for internal jobs, it would be different civic events, parade of lights, those type of internal HRM events that take place. So you can see for external jobs, we're identifying a $200,000 reduction in revenue from recoveries and $110,000 for internal jobs. B20, for whatever reason, the figures that were in there somehow got removed. Did not impact the totals at the bottom of that section, but for information purposes, for extra duty expenses associated with the program, we are going to reduce the budget by, just one sec here, by $292,500 for 2021-22, and then bring that back over the next 2 years, $146,300 in 2022-23, and another $146,200 in 2023-24. Again, the numbers somehow got removed from my presentation, but the total at the bottom takes that in consideration. And finally, on B21, we had a secondment. It was a UN mission that unexpectedly was canceled due to COVID. So that money that was coming back for that position of $193,700, that has to come out. The funding there has to come out. So for total COVID-related impact of $676,200. And so section C, service enhancements. Again, this is the money required for new either positions or funding for new initiatives that we intend to do in 21-22. So there's a court disposition clerk requirement for $85,800, an online training technician for $101,200, funding for the Journey to Change training of $60,000. And this one is the C4 is something new from the presentation we did on the 14th. It's an ask of $85,000 for a body-worn video project coordinator. It's a 12-month term for a total ask of $332,000. And again, just want to reiterate, service enhancements would require regional council to approve an increase to the budget if this proposed budget moves forward as presented today. Next slide, please. And finally, changes in revenue or cost recovery or cost savings that will help reduce the overall budget. We have the first one, D1, $500,000 for WCB compensation recovery. What this is you may recall our sworn members moved to WCB over the past year, and we made an arrangement with WCB that we would continue paying sworn members who are on WCB, and they would provide us the recovery through monthly installments. We increased our WC budget in the current fiscal year for the increased premiums. However, we did not increase recoveries for the money coming back from WCB. So that's why you see that in there this year, because it really, ideally it would have gone in last year, We weren't really ready to make that commitment due to the arrangement that was made with WCB at the time. So that's helping bring down our overall costs. The 63,200 for miscellaneous
Right.
cost. Yes.
Really quickly, WCB.
Sure.
What
Yes.
is WCB?
Workers' compensation. My apologies. Section D2 miscellaneous cost recovery increases. This is basically we adjust all the money that's coming back for whether it's secondments or other service or initiatives where we're being refunded for funding or for example contracts with the RCMP for prisoner care facility use here at the Gottingen Street, or their use of buildings for the integrated units. We always increase for inflationary purposes. So that's 63,200 for this year, for a total revenue cost recovery of 563,200. So as I indicated on the initial slide of the numbers here, the budget increase with service enhancements would be 2,636,900 for 2021-22. Over year to year, the percentage change, you can see there, it shows revenues going up by, or revenues and recoveries going up by 1.426%. Expenses going up 2.8 for an overall net budget change of 3.056%. And that is the end of my presentation. I think the chief's going to jump in here for a little more details on the service enhancements, and then we'll be happy to take questions.
Thanks, Craig. Really appreciate that part of the presentation. And through you, Chair, I will provide some updates on the latest service enhancement, along with the availability to discuss the others that have been requested. As I said at the last budget meeting, this has been an exceptional year. We all know that, and it isn't lost on anyone. Internally, we have taken great care and thought to try to maintain our expenses and come in and be as fiscally responsible as we can. This budget does have a request for service enhancements that we believe are necessary to continue the operation of the service. And I would just like to mention that the service enhancements that we have brought forward contain no new sworn resources. However, we need to continue to be mindful of the organizational needs to address risks, provide a certain level of service, and build important capacity for the organization going forward to ensure that we can continue business continuity. We have one additional ask since we last spoke on budget, based on a board request that was brought up at our most recent board meeting related to body-worn video. I will go over the rationale for it, and I'm happy to go over the rationale for the additional 3 asks that were put forward in December if required, or answer any questions. So the latest addition is the body-worn video project coordinator term position. Building on the board's direction from January 18th and the request for detailed policy development work and in-depth community engagement related to potential body-worn video, this resource will play a focused role in preparing HRP for potential adoption and deployment of a body-worn video program. The position will assist with the following areas: policy research and development, community outreach to gather broad public input, engage and liaise with other jurisdictions, subject matter experts, and stakeholders. This dedicated temporary resource will help HRP develop its plan further to be able to present a detailed and robust information package for future board and council considerations. That's the rationale for the latest ask. I'm happy to go over any of the other enhancements further to what was delivered in December, or answer questions.
Thank you. So before I go to commissioners, procedure-wise, because as mentioned, there are some items in here that, from my understanding, and this is where I'm looking at the solicitor, my understanding the board could request not to be part of the proposed budget. So the question is, do we need a motion to accept this budget as proposed to go to regional council, or if we don't put a motion forward, it goes as presented, or vice versa if we want to remove items? What is the procedure here?
Sorry, just to make sure I understand your question properly, you're asking what happens if the board doesn't put forward a motion in support of this budget, essentially?
So two parts. So if we put forward, if we don't put a motion forward, then it goes as presented, I'm assuming. But if there are items in the service enhancements that we either agree or don't agree with, do we have to put a motion forward to remove items and then it gets presented again, or can we forward that motion or that budget to council?
So it wouldn't go to council without a motion from the board. The board has to make a motion approving a budget that would then go to council for consideration. So if you do want to make changes, well, then you can pass a motion directing either staff to go back and revise the budget in a way that you would like, or would be open to the board to make a motion advancing a budget that is missing, for example, certain items.
Right. So if we wanted to make changes today, that would mean us sending the chief back to revise this and then coming back again for a special meeting?
I believe so. Maybe the clerk can step in and tell me if I'm wrong there, but I believe that generally if the board does not want to go ahead with the staff recommendation, if no one moves the staff recommendation, then a new recommendation could be put forward by the board, but I think that's supposed to be put forward prior to the meeting.
Right, and there's no recommendation or motion. That's where I'm.
Well, I guess that is sort of we don't have a formal report in the way that we often do with a written recommendation from staff. So that's what makes it, I guess, a little more tricky. I see Ian just jumped on camera.
So I want to note that we have Jane Fraser and Jacques Dubé in the meeting as well. So if there's anything they would like to add, I would say if there is any substantive changes that are desired by the board, I think it would be prudent to allow the time to look into the ramifications, what those would be, to make sure that those are coming forward when it goes to budget in an appropriate manner, and that the board is got the holistic knowledge of what any changes could mean, if that was the desire. With the Halifax Regional Police, I think we do have some time, and Jane, please correct me if I'm wrong, if that was to be done, to allow that to be done so there wasn't any changes that were being considered that didn't have the full story behind them.
Jane or Jacques, any comments?
Thank you, Ian. So to respond to the timeline, and thank you, Mr. Chair, Jane Fraser, Executive Director of Finance Asset Management, ICT. So the HRP is scheduled to present in front of Budget Committee on February the 17th, which means that decisions would have to be made. Reports are due into the clerk's office, I believe, on February the 4th. So the timeline is a bit tight. I would think that from a amendment to the budget, if there were items here that the commission wanted to remove, depending on the comfort level, there could be discussion and debate here. And if the board was comfortable with removing an item or changing an item, they could do so by a motion, or if they felt that there needed to be more information, they would send staff back and ask the chief to do an analysis of what the impact would be on the services. So following similar lines to what we do when we're in front of committee of the whole for budget committee.
Okay, and so my understanding then is we need to, as the commission, put a motion forward to either recommend or not recommend the budget. And also the other piece of it with the service enhancements, because these would be considered in council the overs. If we wanted to remove one or all of the overs, those would be items that again, and you can correct me, these wouldn't be items that would be substantial to the standard operating budget, because these are over and above. So if we wanted to remove these items or even add something, well, I guess I wouldn't say add because that would take analysis. So if we wanted to remove something, we would just take it out of the budget and then put a motion forward that would then go to council, right? Or would we have to take something out and then ask the chief to come back to analyze that again? I don't.
Mr. Chair, I think it really depends on the substance of what the issue is.
Right.
You know, so if there's if the commission wants to understand significant impacts that can't be answered today, then it's you know, it would have to go back for you know, a briefing note or a staff report. I think it really depends on what the issue is and the commission's comfort in being able to make a decision today with the information that the chief and supporting staff can give them.
Okay, great. So, Commissioner colleague, so the reason why I did that is to make sure that as we move forward, we know exactly what we can have a discussion on and how we take that forward. So we need a motion, and we can have a discussion first, and then if someone wants to put a motion afterwards, we can do that. Or if somebody's comfortable putting a motion forward now, we can also have that discussion. The other piece is with the service enhancement. So if you agree or don't agree with these items, if we just present it as is, there's no amendments needed. If we don't agree with any of these service enhancements, then we would have to make an amendment to remove those from the proposed budget. So, you know, with that information, I hope it's clear, and I'll just start. I'll actually go by the list I'm supposed to go by in terms of speaking. Commissioner Blackburn, any comments on the budget?
Yes, and this is a question for Chief Kinsella. So the bottom line is that in this budget, you're requesting $2,636,900 more compared to the budget that was passed last year, the revised COVID budget. So it was just about a year ago this time that I publicly said that my support of any increases to the police budget would be directly, well, it would just be, you know, it's directly related to how we're doing with the Wortley report and the action items for the year. So I guess my question is on the Wortley action items, how many have we moved to the complete list for this year? Thank you.
So through you, Chair, to the Commissioner, I don't have the exact number of what we've completed. I'm happy to get that to you. To your question about how budget increases relate to training, relate to Wortley, I can tell you that the online training technician request and the Journey to Change training relate directly to recommendations in Section 4 of Wortley. And you know, potentially the body-worn video project will also assist with some of the recommendations in Wortley. That remains to be seen because we do have to have that in-depth community outreach as requested by the board. And it's not a matter of, you know, doing that lightly, I don't think. I think it is the wish of the board that we do an in-depth analysis to see, you know, what the community thinks, what they believe the impact will be to them, and then see how we can arrange and work within that. So 3 out of the 4 requests, I believe, directly relate to Wortley. Happy to get you further information on exactly how, but it is Section 4 of the recommendations that mostly relate to, you know, how we interact with the community. And there's a number in there that do directly speak to improvements for training. So I hope that helps.
All right. Thank you very much, Chief. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Borden.
Yeah, thanks, Craig, and thanks, Chief, for putting that together. I do have a couple of questions. On slide 4, we talk about the decrease that we've seen in training costs. I just want to maybe drill down in that a little bit. That would be due to how the training is delivered, less expenses, you know, for people being off work versus reduced training. Training is still going on, essentially, is what I'm looking to confirm. I'll simplify it.
Yes, and thanks, Commissioner, through you, Chair. Yes, absolutely, training is going on. And, you know, we have our mandated kind of adequacy-driven training that we do regularly in the organization. The bulk of that is delivered in-house. We also have, you know, adequacy and mandated training that requires travel, such as courses at the Canadian Police College and other areas, mostly across Canada, but we also attend needed and necessary training in the United States. All of that has been basically shut down due to COVID. You know, we're very concerned about the COVID environment and the impacts, so we are very cognizant of that. And that I can tell you that any training that is outside of the province, there are discussions between myself and CAO, and you know, all considerations are giving to public health. So anything that can wait, basically because of COVID, is waiting. And what we anticipate is post-COVID, there will be an increase in training required. We have a number of people that are kind of waiting for courses. However, there will be a bit of a backlog. So fundamentally, we are maintaining training that is required by adequacy to ensure appropriate and effective policing. There are a number of training courses that we would like to go on, and we'll endeavor to get that on them as soon as we can, based on you know, participation in the COVID environment.
So just further to that, from a training perspective, the Journey to Change funding, so the new money that's being asked for there, is that part of that training budget? So is that sort of being offset by some reductions in training, or is that being asked for as a separate ask outside of the existing training budget?
So thank you, Commissioner. And am I still on?
Yep.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just going to get the picture back up here. There we go. And through you, Chair, thanks, Commissioner. So Journey to Change, this is an additional ask. So currently, the Journey to Change training from a financial standpoint is not included in the budget. The goal of Journey to Change, we have held one course so far. The ultimate goal is to get all of our members trained in the organization. And we believe that that is the best way to ensure that we're meeting the spirit and recommendations of Whartley and continuing to build on trust and communication with our African Nova Scotian community. The course that we just recently ran in the fall was financed through the overage that we haven't been spending on the training budget. So in all transparency, we wanted to bring this forward to ensure that we have those funds, if that is the will of the board, so we can proceed with the training. And I think it's important to know that the money is being sought. We're being as fiscally responsible as we can. And if we don't spend the money on training because of continued COVID restrictions, so on, we certainly will have that money at the end of the year and it won't be spent. And that is the case for this year. But once we get out of the COVID environment, we should be able to expand our class sizes, expand our ability to deliver, and we're hoping as quickly as we can to move everyone through the course and give them that opportunity, and then have a robust discussion about where do we go next and how do we improve further. But we'll keep the board advised of that as we go along.
Excellent, thank you. The next one on slide 6, it talked about some of the changes that were put into place during COVID. Just wondering if there's any of those sort of changes that have led to efficiencies that will continue sort of once we get back to normal. Has it identified any areas where there may be a potential to have to continue having a cost reduction in some of those areas?
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner, and through you, Chair. Excellent question. So, you know, when you look at the detriments and the impact of COVID, we've also found, you know, some areas that probably won't change after we get through COVID. And one of those areas is around training and the delivery of training, and the position that is an over ask here will help us deliver that and do that. Currently, we can't get enough people in because of COVID. We have impacts to people by adjusting their schedule. So if we can get to the delivery of training through video, through Teams, whatever we can do that will help us make savings, we're going to do that. So, you know, the journey to change itself doesn't have the ability, in my view, to be delivered online. There might be components of it that can, but there's many other training positions or training courses that we could deliver, and the multimedia training technician will allow us to do that. Some of the other areas that you know, we've seen improvements through COVID and will likely remain is the creation of the callback unit. And the callback unit was designed to take calls over the phone, resolve things without officers attending in person, limit our exposure. Well, that was the first option that we had. We're also seeing that it's quite frankly a better option. It's a more efficient option in a lot of areas. So we will likely continue with that unit as we go forward post-COVID, and then go from there. And we're constantly assessing how we can do better and be better. And we believe that these requests will help us do that.
Okay, great. Just a couple more, I promise. Just the body-worn video, or the body-worn camera resource, that would be a resource to this budget and not the capital budget. I just want to make sure capital's just equipment. It wouldn't be the resources to support that project.
Through you, Chair, yes, that's the way it's been presented. And just to remind the board, it is a term position. We're looking at a 12-month term for this particular position, and that's how it will flow. It'll come out of operating, and subject to any additions from Ms. Fraser.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, Chief, you hit it spot on. Thank you.
And then last thing, just a comment. We just remind folks about budget last year. Certainly take Commissioner Blackburn's comments about tying budget increases to the performance on the Wortley side, on the Wortley recommendations. I just want to remind folks that last year we had a number of budget items that were tied to the Wortley recommendations that had been approved by the board and put forward to council, and were subsequently denied by council. So I do certainly appreciate the spirit in which Commissioner Blackburn is raising that as an issue, but I think it may be a little bit unfair of us to, you know, hold, you know, that as the standard when we know that there hasn't been support from council in the past in making sure that we had the appropriate funding to move some of those initiatives forward, perhaps more quickly than we were able to without the additional resources. And that's everything I have, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. My mic took a minute to unmute. Great questions. Commissioner Kent.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is to Chief Kinsella. I realize that there's not a lot of detail for us to drill too far down, but one of the concerns that I continuously raise throughout my short time back at council and at all of the budget deliberations is around street safety, the increase in speeding, the unsafe conditions that many of our residents are feeling. There's no question that it is a huge concern, probably the #1 concern that was reflected in the campaigning that we did, and it continues to be as a sworn councillor. So I'm just wondering if you can offer some insight on this budget that's going forward now, where we could see some emphasis on the that layer, addressing that in the coming years. I don't know if that would be. Well, let's just get an answer there, and I may have additional questions.
So thank you for the question, Commissioner, and through you, Chair. So, the state of traffic, the state of community safety as it relates to pedestrian and vehicle traffic is certainly a concern for us. As you do, we hear loud and clearly every day on, the issues that the community is bringing forward. So there are, the three aspects to traffic. There's the education piece, there's the engineering piece, and then, of course, there's the enforcement piece. We currently have a fully functioning traffic unit that is out, in my view, doing excellent work. Just recently, and today, in fact, we released a statement to let people know the enforcement that's going on within HRM. One of the areas that we've been really focused on is stunting. And, the sad part of it is with all the enforcement that we're doing and all the education and all the reminders we put out in the public, we're regularly finding that people are committing those types of offenses. So we're on it, we hear you, and we're committed to it. As far as your question around, what enhancements can be made, we're constantly assessing our response to traffic. We're ensuring that our traffic unit is out, fully deployed, fully operational. We also have support and are encouraging patrol officers when they're not responding to those priority calls to ensure that they are alert and paying attention to traffic enforcement within the city, and they continue to do that. There is no direct ask in this budget for additional sworn resources to deploy for traffic services. So if that is the will of the commission, we're happy to do some analysis and bring back some information on what that might look like for you. The other pieces, we're working with HRM and Brad Anguish and his people at TPW to ensure that we're putting a global, well, not a global lens, but a municipal lens on how we respond and how we can be better, and we're regularly meeting on that. So extra bodies is not always the answer, but it can help in certain circumstances. We're committed to efficiencies, and we will continue to do that, whether it's the signs that post speeding, for people to slow down as they're driving by, reminders, those kind of things. But we are committed to it, and we're here for the board. Happy to get any other information that might assist with your decision making.
Thank you. I guess I just want to offer up an idea or a thought around the communications, the education piece, because I think that's so important. At the end of the day, the counselors and the service, police service, they're not the ones out there speeding. Well, I'd like to think it's not the counselors and the commissioners, but our community visitors, our community residents, ultimately are those that are driving the cars. And I think that it's really, really important for us to remind them that they play a role in solutions. And I also think that we need to be very, very, very cognizant right now of the fact that there are more people at home or on their phones paying attention to the things that are coming through digitally. And when I wasn't that long ago, and I don't have it in front of me, I meant to have it in front of me. There was a notice that went out through Facebook on I think there was a special day in relation to slowing down, or I don't recall, but it was a really, really long written piece. And I thought, oh my gosh, I want my kids to be able to know some of this, but there's no way they're going to look at that, read to the bottom. I think we need to be very, very creative of how we portray the impact of dangerous driving. How do we do it visually? I think back to some of the really early MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, MAD programs where they had to be kind of explicit about what is the impact? What does it look like when a drunk driver kills someone? What does it look like when these accidents happen? And I'm not sure where the balance is for portraying some of these kinds of things, but I think we really, really have to play into where people are what people are paying attention to and where are they getting their information. Television, the internet, all these different layers. I'm not sure. I guess I need to be convinced that we're doing those kinds of communication and education piece that in a way that are really going to be picked up by people. I'm a little concerned that we're still looking at old school, write it out in a paragraph and you hope someone reads it. So I just throw that out there and a tidbit for maybe a presentation sometime in the future to the board on how are we doing in communications? What are we doing in the way of education pieces on how policing is done and how some of these really big issues could be looked at, what we're doing, and then see if there's some input that we could offer around what might be more effective or is effective, even validating what you're doing and say, yeah, you know what, that's really good. Maybe we can help, and maybe there's ways to get this to another platform and get it out there so people can see. And for me, it's a kind of a wake up to the fact that these streets are unsafe because there's people out there speeding and driving dangerously. It's not all about the police reaction. We want to get ahead of it and say, and help people learn and teach their children and teach their family members and coach them to not speed, because these are the consequences. This is very real. So I'll just throw that out there for now. You know, you can comment. If not, maybe we can consider having a presentation in the future.
Yeah, and just very quickly, Commissioner, appreciate your comments, and always worth a review. So happy to bring that presentation forward to the board at a future date if that's a request. And thanks again.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Can I just add that anything that we do should include HRP and RCMP, just for consistency?
Yeah, we'll take that back for a future agenda setting. And Chief, you mentioned that as well. So thank you, Commissioner Kent. And next, Commissioner Thomas, any comments?
No, I just want to thank the Chief Kinsella for his presentation, and also the questions that I did have were already brought up by other commissioners, so thank you for that. So I have no other questions or concerns at this time, Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner McDougall.
Thank you, and thanks for the presentation. I have a couple of questions. One of the points that Craig made as he was speaking was that vacant positions were not being filled, and I wondered if you could share an approximate number of vacant positions that you aren't filling at the moment.
So I'll thank you, Commissioner, and through you, Chair. I'll turn it over to Mr. Horton in just a minute. So I'm not sure, there might have been a little bit of miscommunication there. So we are endeavoring to fill all the positions that and have filled some of them that were left vacant due to the COVID environment. Vacancy management is something that we pay very close attention to, work closely with HRM on, and I'll just turn it over to Mr. Horton to clarify any other comments that he would like to on that.
Thank you, Chief. So when the budget was approved, the COVID budget was approved back in May, we had identified a number of positions that were currently vacant that we would look to keep vacant throughout the year. And I believe there was there was about 18 or so positions that were identified. So as the Chief said, we're working towards filling those now. To do that, we also have to reduce the vacancy credit that was increased for the budget for this year in order to allow that to happen.
Thank you. Yes, it does. Thank you. And I have another point I wanted to make. Just, I think it's probably to Craig about the presentation. On page 3, there was, it says proposed 2020-21, and I wondered if that was just a typo. For future, you know, just for the record, maybe should agree with the other numbers.
That is a typo. I will have that changed and put it on the record there. All these 2020, 21, 22 dates. It's easy to make those mistakes, but I will have that fixed.
It can get confusing for sure. I wondered too, we talked about the service enhancements, and it's my understanding that, in fact, a budget will go to council and that any service enhancements within that budget are considered separately when the budget goes to council. If we approve this complete budget, including the service enhancements, in fact, the way council deals with it is as a separate item. Is that true? Is that my understanding, or is it not as complex as that?
No, it's, Mr. Chair, I would just weigh in on this as Jacques. The Board of Police Commissioners is required to present a budget to council. Council has the right to say yes or no. So any overs that you wish to consider or include in your budget submission to council, you need to make that clear to council.
Okay.
Council will decide the overs here. It's the Board of Police Commissioners. So the council doesn't have a right to parse your budget. What it has a right to do is to say yes or no.
Okay.
Anything else is up to the Board of Police Commissioners.
Okay, thank you. And finally, my last question. I just wondered if you could explain the workers' compensation $500,000 item again, just a little bit clearer. You said it wasn't included in last year, but in this upcoming budget, just so that I can understand that.
Absolutely, through you, Chair, to the Commissioner. So in the fall 2019-2020, HRM and HRP worked towards having sworn members moved from self-insured to workers' compensation. And doing that and preparing for the budget for 2020-21, we rightfully increased the premiums that we would pay. We increased the budget for WCB for the premiums. And normally, when someone goes on WCB would pay them directly. There was a lot of discussion on how that would work, and it felt it would be best if HRM or HRP would continue to pay those officers while they're on WCB, and then WCB would pay the municipality through monthly installments based on who's on WCB and who's not. We budgeted for the premiums, like I had said. However, the money coming back from WCB, which would be basically a recovery, was not budgeted in 2020-21. So we're now making sure that and it's roughly, it's looking to be, because this is the first year we've been dealing with it, it looks like it's approximately $500,000 a year. That's going to come in. So we're putting that in under a recovery, which is offsetting our expenses. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you for the clarity. And I have no further questions.
Thank you, Commissioner McDougall. And actually, that was your question around council's over and under aspect is a great question, because it is a different process when it gets to council. So that gives some clarity on how we do it. So two of my questions have already been asked. One was around the training, making sure that was still ongoing, which Chief did mention, and also the workers' compensation. So two or three of my questions. One is around the COVID impacts. So are we back to roughly the same service levels pre-COVID?
So thanks for the question, Chair. So the answer is no. We're still in the pandemic. We're still dealing with the COVID reality. Things are better, obviously, and I think everyone's paying attention to the number of cases. We still need to be careful and ensure that we can provide business continuity, particularly on the front line. So we have those kind of checks and balances in place. We have restored some staffing to pre-COVID levels to the extent that we can manage it and still maintain the safety and protection not only of our members but also of our community. Our hope is that COVID will be finished sooner rather than later, and that we will get back to pre-COVID deployments.
We'll get the magic date from Ms. Borden when COVID's going to be over. I'm sure with the province they know, and they're just not sharing that with us. But again, I think we all hope that it's over sooner than later. And that my question is also related to the community officers, and you already talked about traffic and the work you're still doing with that. So wondering if most are back. I know when we last had the discussion, you said that most of them have gone back, but not all of them. So I'm just wondering if we're at a place where all of our CROs are back on the job quotation. And also our school officers, are they back in schools as well?
So we do have a number of, we have a school officer in each division. We also have a number of CROs that have returned to the divisions. We continue to monitor the staffing in that area, and we continue to, as you mentioned, hope that we can go back to pre-COVID deployments. So we're constantly assessing and paying attention. And as I mentioned earlier, our hope is to get back to pre-COVID deployment across the organization. And our intention is to fill the SRO and CRO position back to pre-COVID, but we have to continue to adjust and day to day to the COVID environment. And we also need to make sure, as I've already mentioned, that we build enough contingency and the ability to respond to frontline needs. So short answer, there is a contingency back, but not everyone is there yet.
Okay, great. Are there any capital items that haven't been presented today that's going to be presented to council, or is this everything within the HRP budget?
So through you, Chair, to the board, this is the operating budget. We haven't addressed the capital piece. I'm not sure if Jane Fraser wants to comment, but we're still, from our end, working through that process.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through to the commissioner. So the capital budget is scheduled to be presented in front of Regional Council on February the 24th, I believe, or 23rd, Budget Committee rather, not Regional Council. And at that time, the full discussion of all the projects that have been recommended by staff have been will be presented at that time. And certainly the chief and his staff have been represented at those conversations and the discussions.
So then, will we then be scheduling another special meeting to discuss the capital items? Because I know we changed our procedure to make sure that capital items are presented to the board as well as information.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So yes, they would be for information. The capital budget, which is obviously different than the operating budget, is really falls under the purview and the of the CAO reporting through to Regional Council. So certainly those can be presented to the Board of Police Commissioners in advance for information. I don't believe that we would do that in advance of that information being public, but I see the CAO is on the line to speak to that as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. All I wanted to mention here, to make sure we're all aligned on this, is that this is the HRP budget, but there's also the RCMP budget. So Chief Superintendent Gray and my staff and Jane have had conversations about the RCMP budget and the level of detail that would be helpful to the board and for council. So I know that Janice is working on that now, and I think it might be, the documentation may be due tomorrow or the next day. So I think it would be incumbent on the board to receive that presentation prior to it going to council, because there are, if you look at the business plan HRP presented, it has a great amount of detail around, council priority outcomes and all that kind of thing, right? And has more detail, has more line item detail than what you have right now in terms of a total spend for the RCMP. And I can appreciate Janice's problem, is that the final number from the province is not yet known, but we have a pretty good sense of what that will be going forward. I think Jane has gotten some indication from the province as to what the percentage increase would be, and therefore the RCMP could probably readily prepare a more detailed, fulsome kind of budget presentation for this board prior to being finalized by council. That also means that we would have to have another special meeting of the board fairly quickly. likely later this week or very early next week, just to make sure that the board is comfortable with the presentation before it goes to council, because the police budget that council has to receive from the board is the entirety of the budget. So it includes both RCMP costs and HRP costs. And so I just wanted to make that comment so that everybody is clear as to what we're going to do on the RCMP side in addition to the HRP side. And frankly, I apologize that we haven't got this to you before, because we just sort of sorted this out here in the last few days based on conversation. So if anybody's going to blame anybody, blame me, and we can move from there. So thank you.
Well, because you took the blame, I'll blame you again, because one of the motions that the commission put back, and I know I say that lightly. One of the motions that the commission did some time ago was that the operation budget would be presented with the capital, and to bring folks up to speed, especially Councillor Kent, who wasn't here at the time, is when a few years ago when the armored vehicle came into before our budget discussion, we had budget the next day, and then we had a special budget meeting with the HRP and RCMP, and that item was talked about and really is an information item because it is part of the capital budget and council is the one who's in charge of it. Commissioners didn't really have an opportunity to give their feedback on it, and it kind of just happened, and the rest is history. So the commission asked that, well, as we move forward, make sure that anything related to HRP, and we want to say RCMP as well, but we know that that's a little different. But anything related to HRP gets presented all at once. So all at once, operating, capital, projects, etc. And again, timelines and COVID probably restricted getting all that together at once. So my assumption was going to be that there would be another meeting at some point to present the capital and any other items that would go to council, so we can see what budget is being presented to council in its entirety. So that was my assumption, and I hope that it doesn't surprise commissioners, because we did also agree that we want to make sure that we see the budget as it gets presented to council at the commission.
On the capital side, Mr. Chair, the capital budget is pretty much finalized from staff perspective. So we can easily provide the board with the capital items that the CAO is prepared to recommend to council in relation to this, right? So the capital budget is a little different. It's actually my responsibility to produce a capital budget and for council, and council determines that. But to your point, I think it's more than appropriate that the Board of Police Commissioners has a heads up in terms of what that capital budget looks like and how it may or may not impact your operating budget going forward, right? So
right.
So I think I know that the chief and everyone over there has taken that into account in terms of operating budget. But I think it's just in terms of transparency, I think that would be helpful as well.
So two questions then. So since it's already complete, could we then get that presentation? It might be our meeting coming up on the 8th, depending on how many items we have there, because we do have a long and camera item that's coming up. Would the commission want to get that on the 8th, or would you want to schedule a special meeting to get the capital items and anything else related to the budget before it goes to council? And this is really just, I guess, a question for the commission is, how do you want to proceed with making sure we get that information? And before you answer, Jog, I'll just, if any of the commissioners want to just unmute their mic, and if they have any idea how to do that, I'm open to suggestions. Yeah, Natalie?
No, just put a comment in the chat. The motion, I think, that was brought forward in the past was that the chief would highlight any additional capital asks in his budget presentation to us. So when we did this because I think this was in place last year, if I remember correctly, and it was really just to make sure that, you know, we were aware of what those items were going forward, and that we could share with the chief any, you know, concerns that we had, and then he would take that forward. So it wasn't a formal process last year. It was just making sure that there was an awareness created for the board as to what those items were.
So I just put the motion in the chat. I just found it while Jacques was speaking, and that was it there. Jacques, did you add any comments?
The only comment I would make is I'm not sure if we can wait till the 8th in terms of timing of getting budget presentation to council. Jane, can you somebody remind me, or Craig, when are you scheduled? When is police scheduled to go before budget committee of the whole again?
Police is scheduled for Wednesday, February the 17th, which means that the report would have to be to the clerk's office on February the 10th. So your review would be in advance of that. So the 8th would be the Monday, obviously.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I think we can be flexible enough, but if it's at all possible, I would ask that the board meet prior to the end of next week on this, so that we can get the reports into the system by the Wednesday the 10th.
Right.
Whereas the board would would then be in a position it would have had approval of both the HRP and the RCMP piece, and would have line of sight on the capital at the same time.
Right, and for clarification too, like that, there wouldn't be an approval needed from us at that point, because this is the approval that you need today, and the items that we would be getting presented to us would just be information items, right?
Depending what your decisions are today, I guess is right. So if you're recommending, if today you are making a motion to adopt the budget as submitted by the chief, including the additional items, then that's a recommendation going forward. The only piece that'd be missing at that point would be the RCMP budget that you would then require a meeting on to just look at that and have a conversation to make sure you're comfortable with that going before council with a recommendation on that. So then that way the entire budget has been then recommended to council by the Board of Police Commissioners. And that way, and of course, same time we could circulate the capital list to you in relation to police, so you see it'll have line of sight on that in advance of approving the final piece of the budget.
Right. So you're saying no matter what, we have to come back again for another meeting to approve the RCMP?
I believe so. I think that's the prudent way to go here, because obviously RCMP is part of the police budget, and the board is required to approve a budget for police services. Right.
All right. So my suggestion, and obviously up to the commission, is that when we do have that meeting for the RCMP budget, that the capital and any other items that are outside this budget get presented at the same time. Does that work?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
See the head nods from everybody. Okay, so that works for us, and I don't believe that Ian, I don't believe, or Andrea, whoever, I don't believe that meeting is scheduled yet.
It's not scheduled yet. We've been working right now to try to find some potential date options that we will circulate as soon as humanly possible to schedule that meeting.
Okay, cool. So commissioners expect that to come forward for RCMP and capital items. So I'm happy we got that out the way, and I think I had one more question, and then I'll leave it there. Thank you for the indulgence. And the other item that I had a question around was the court disposition clerk. I know you talked about it, Chief, but I forget exactly what that position does. And this is part of the service enhancement, C1.
Thanks, Chair. And so the creation of a disposition clerk will help address the backlog of sentencing dispositions and help us mitigate future risk as we go forward. Historically, this function has been done as a secondary duty by record staff, so they have primary duties that they attend to each and every day. Dispositions come on a regular basis from the courts, advising of outcomes from trials and, sentences, those kind of things. And what's been happening over the years is that the backlog has been increasing of these dispositions. There has been no one permanently assigned to this position at any time. And as a result of fluctuating staffing levels and things like that, these dispositions have been building up. It's a responsibility of every police service to ensure that they are entering these dispositions into the appropriate RMS system and national database to ensure that it is updated. And we have been attempting to manage through the years, as I mentioned, with staff doing it as secondary duties, and also filling in or moving people into those positions on a temporary basis when staffing becomes available. However, it has not worked, and the gaps that have built up over the years, and this is something that has been happening for many years, came to my attention in the fall of 2020, and it clearly is the time for us to move a full-time resource into this position and ensure that we're meeting our responsibilities to ensure that data is appropriately captured.
Okay, that helps to understand for me. So, commissioners, Chief Gray, I see you have a question in the comments.
Thank you very much. Just a quick question, and maybe Jacques, you can help me with the answer. So recognizing this is, I would say, a new presentation or something that the RCMP has not done to the board in the past, is there somebody or something that we can look to or follow in regards to the information you're actually going to be looking for? Because some of it just won't be available, as you know. So is there somebody that we can speak with in regards to what is actually expected at that presentation to the board on our budget?
Yeah, thanks, Janice. So it was my understanding that you had a conversation with Sally Christie and my team yesterday, and that she was, we have the business plan template that we use that's been provided to either you or your team. So if you have any questions on that, there's a template that we use. But what I said to Sally was, look, here's the template, provide the template, fill in as much as he possibly can, understanding that you may not be able to fill in all of the gaps that are there, but I think it's, there would be a breakdown on the budget number, the total budget number. There would be, special initiatives or special, if you look at Dan's presentation, he has under various categories, all of the special, perhaps special things that would be going on within the service that support some of the council's priority outcomes. So it's that kind of stuff, right?
Yes, no problem. Okay, I understand that then. Yes, we did have a good conversation with Sally and as well as Michael Pappas. So very helpful. Okay, we're fine. Thank you.
Thank you. So, commissioners, the process now is a motion to be brought forward or not to move the budget, the proposed budget, HRP budget. So I'll look at commissioners to put forward a motion if anyone's so willing to. Yeah, Mr. Borden.
I'd like to put forward a motion that the Board of Police Commissioners approve the budget presented by Chief Kinsella today and forward that on to council as our recommendation.
Second by Commissioner McDougall. And Ian, I believe that would follow procedure. No more needed for that motion.
Yeah, if that is the desire of the commission, that motion should allow that to happen as per process. Thank you.
Okay, great. So we had a great discussion on the budget itself. So I'm going to assume there's no further questions on the motion that was brought forward, but I will give anyone a chance to jump in if they'd like to, and just feel free to unmute your mic and ask a question. All right, not seeing that, I'll call for the question to vote on the motion on the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Seeing none opposed, that passes, and this budget will be presented to Regional Council. Now, it was mentioned earlier, so if this doesn't, say it gets to council and council asks this to be reduced in any way, what happens then? Just so we're prepared if that case does happen.
So, Mr. Chair, what will happen, the budget would be submitted to council. If council has a yes/no decision to make, if it says no, it goes back to the council, to the board for a rejigging of the budget. Council would likely probably give some guidance in terms of that. Could be a dollar figure, it could be whatever, but normally they'll say, they'll say either yes or no, and no. Here's sort of the guidance that we'd like you to achieve. And then the board would have to go back and have another meeting and look and have Dan at that point would go back with his team and rework the numbers and come back to the board with another submission and another decision that would then be brought back to council for consideration.
Okay, great. Is that clear for folks? All right, sounds good. Well, our next meeting date is February 8th, and that is not a budget meeting. That's a special, regularly scheduled meeting. And we will see you then. So if that, I call for adjournment by member, yeah. Commissioner Borden, great, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for today. Great discussion, and I'll see you on the 8th. Take care.
Stay safe.
I think you'll see us before the 8th, aren't we?